Hello everyone and welcome to rural Germany. In today's episode we are going to build a castle. The main goal of this castle won't be to protect from enemies, but more to function as a sort of palace. It still is easy defendable, as you would expect from every old castle. As you can see, the core of this castle consists of one asset. It is an amazing castle asset made by Titan, and I've wanted to use this for a while now, so I'm really happy that I can give this a good place in my German build. What makes it extra cool is that this castle asset is actually based on a castle in Germany. It's located around 130 kilometers to the south of Berlin, so it's not really in the area that we're building, but the most important is that it looks good and looks realistic. Because this is such an important part in this build, I will link the asset in the video description. Later on we are going to lower the terrain around the castle, so I added some rocks to function as cliffs. This gives a better strategic position to the castle and it just looks really nice. We then use asphalt surfaces to create a kind of plaza or square in front of the castle. Then we are, as I mentioned a few seconds ago, lowering the terrain around the castle with some terraforming networks. We will add more rocks and fine-tune the height difference later in the video. We then add parking places on the plaza in front of the castle, so it is easier for tourists to visit it. We will then continue detailing this same plaza with various stuff, including a fountain. The thing about this fountain is that instead of how it would be built in most cases, this is not straight in front of the entrance of the castle. This is mainly because the fountain is built in the middle of the plaza to make it look good from a bird's eye view. So let's talk about the history of this castle. Some things in the story will be made up, so it doesn't really correspond with historical states and cities in the area that we're inspiring this build of, because although my build is located in the Eifel region and I use cities from outside the Eifel region as well to kind of get some link with reality, most of my stories are made up and completely fictionized. Sometimes I do take inspiration from real life events though. So, back to the story. Remember how in episode 3 I was talking about the people from the flat area conquering Ersendorf and basically those two states being in rivalry with each other? Well, I have never talked about the state to the south of Ersendorf. This was another quite big state that included most of the hills that are south and east of Ersendorf. Ersendorf itself was just a little town with a few other towns that belonged to it and basically stayed neutral until the flat area people conquered it. The state in the south didn't really care about Ersendorf or a flat area up north because they were more focused on the big rivers in the south and the east, and people from the other side of those rivers trying to attack them from there. This is why, close to their northwest border, on the most hilly part, their leader at the time, he called himself king, but there were a lot of small countries in these regions, so I don't know if king really is the right word. Anyways, he decided to build himself a palace in this hilly northwest part. This is the castle that you're seeing right now, although it has been developed over the ages. The castle itself hasn't been conquered, but at some point after the forts built for defense of this state were conquered by the people of Trier, and this original small country got completely taken over by Trier, an actual existing city that is south of the Eifel, their leader at the time decided this would be the perfect castle for a summer palace. So he renovated it and now he had a summer residence. Over time, this happened a few times when the land got conquered by different states, and at some point it became the property of some noble family, which have kept it intact and renovated it a few times over the ages until it was given to the government at the end of the last century. Since then, it has been a big tourist attraction. The base of this version of the castle has been built in the 15th century when Trier took over, but the original castle that was part of the smaller country has been built somewhere in the 13th century. So then you know what time periods we're talking about. That was the story of this castle. While I was telling that story, we started building on a small garden outside of the palace. We will build another one inside of the castle, but this garden is just with flowers only, and in my opinion it just looks really nice to have this next to the castle to show that there's more to it than just some walls. Here we are adding another building that is part of the modular version of this castle, where you can just basically pick parts and add it to the original asset or place them on their own. And I at least wanted to place one building to make it look bigger and showcase what I've told in the story, that this castle has a long history of building extra stuff to it. This building here fits perfectly into the story as one of the many expansions that this castle has gotten. And of course, I couldn't resist to add a dirt parking lot, because hey, I do it everywhere. Though I can imagine that this parking place that isn't an official parking place was created on a day where the normal parking lot was completely full, so some cars just parked in the mud. And nowadays I can imagine that it is used by the people that are maintaining the garden outside of the palace, as they are probably too lazy to park their car on the actual parking lot, walk back to the garden. When they finish working, walk back to the parking lot, get their car and drive away. That is why I also placed 2 cars here, to show that it is not a random dirt spot, but actually a spot where people are parking. We are now finishing the cliff formation where the castle is standing on in a realistic way by adding more rocks and then adding trees on top of them. After that, we will detail the areas around the castle with the farm fields and finishing the entrance road to this castle. We are back with the final thing of today's video, and that is detailing the inside of the castle. The asset came with a nice open place in the middle of it, and I decided I could add some foliage on there, as well as making it a pretty enjoyable park. So what the plan is, we're going to add flowers, trees, bushes and benches, for example. I really wanted to have more big trees and bushes, because we already had a flower only garden outside of the castle. Anyways, as this was the final thing of today's episode, I want to thank you for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this build. Personally, this was my favorite build of the entire series. There will be end cinematics as always. So yeah, let me know what you thought of this castle, leave a like, and I'll see you next time.